Good guy Valve. That's what you've heard a million times. I know that I've said it. There are memes about it, but let's be honest, companies aren't good guys. And I'm not going to sit here and pretend to know Valve's motivations when they make decisions that they make. But more often than not, from an outside perspective, Valve has been looked on favorably by the gaming community because the people in charge over there seem to understand that it's in the company's best interest to do the right thing. Sure, they might be able to make a fast buck doing the wrong thing, but they seem to recognize that goodwill is worth more than that fast buck. I'd say this is down to Valve not being a publicly traded company. They don't have a bunch of shareholders to answer to whose only point is to raise stock prices. So they get to make decisions that they want without worrying about getting voted out by those shareholders. It's a good position to be in. But Valve's sterling reputation in the gaming industry is starting to show signs of wear. For years, Valve has not only supported fan creations based on their IP, but they've also encouraged it. Their official stance is as long as you're not stealing code and you're using the official SDK and you're not selling it, then you're good, you're in the clear. In addition, Valve even says that if you get their permission, you can make stuff based on their IP and sell it on Steam. They've done that in the past with Black Mesa, which is a remake of Half-Life using the Source 2 engine. And if you believe the recent headlines, that era is over. Valve is now the bad guy, and they've come down on 2 fan creations in just a couple of days. One with Portal 64, which is a version of Portal that will now actually run on the Nintendo 64, and Team Fortress Source 2, which is trying to revive the multiplayer shooter using some more modern tools. Speaking of tools, I am often asked about what tools I use to make these videos. People that want to start a live stream of their own or a YouTube channel, they want to know what gear should they buy, and I have spent a lot of money on this stuff, and some of it has been wasted money. But one company I've never felt like I've regretted buying something from is Rode. They make my mixer, my boom arm, my portable microphones that I have right here, but they also released this right here, which is perfect for people that want to start a gaming stream or a YouTube channel. It's called the Streamer X. It includes a capture card and an audio interface all in one, so you don't have to have a billion things on your desk. It's very small, it's well made, it has some of the best preamps in the business, so your audio is going to sound fantastic. In fact, they are using the same preamps in this that I'm using to record this video right now. So if you want to start your own gaming stream or YouTube channel, make sure that you check out the links to Rode's products down below. And if you need any advice on using it, then check out my brand new channel all about content creation. I'll link it in the description. So why is Valve changing its stance? Well, first off, let's take a look at Portal 64. This could be because Valve doesn't want to draw the ire of Nintendo, who are notoriously litigious. Let's be honest. We don't know if the people who are behind Portal 64 are using any proprietary Nintendo stuff in order to work on their project. And if that is the case, and they are, and Portal 64 ends up on Steam, then Valve could get a takedown notice from Nintendo. So in a way, it's really smart of them to try and avoid that happening. On the other hand, I don't know that there's really a downside for Valve to take a risk on allowing something like Portal 64 to exist on Steam, because number one, Valve isn't putting in the work themselves to make Portal 64. Number two, what would most likely happen is that the people who are working on this project, if they are in violation of Nintendo's intellectual property, is that Nintendo would send a cease and desist letter to which Valve would just capitulate, and they would... I don't feel like that risk versus reward is skewed towards the risk. I feel like it's skewed away. So I think that if Nintendo does sue Valve over something like this, like Portal 64, and they come away with money, I think that the only way that happens is if Valve thumbs their nose at Nintendo, and I don't see any world in which case that would happen. That being said, it seems like this is made with some not officially released libraries for the Nintendo 64, and if that's the case, then technically this is breaking some of those guidelines that Valve has for mods on Steam, and I feel like Valve doesn't really have a choice if that's the case. So that have to step in and put a stop to it. This is not the first time that we've seen Valve wary of drawing the attention of Nintendo. In the past, they've removed the GameCube and Wii emulator called Dolphin from the Steam store because it allegedly contained Nintendo's proprietary information, and Valve didn't want to have to deal with that. So it's possible that we can imagine Valve is just playing defense when it comes to Portal 64. But what about Team Fortress Source 2? As we've seen in the past, Valve has allowed fans to use their IP in order to create something new. And as I mentioned earlier on in the video, the only requirements are that you're not stealing assets, you're using the official SDK, and you're not making any money off of it. It seems like the issue with Team Fortress is that the people in charge of that project are not licensing officially the characters from Team Fortress. And in the past, we've seen projects like Black Mesa get permission. So does this come down to the fact that the people who are working on Team Fortress Source 2 didn't ask first? Because if that's the case, then why wouldn't Valve simply reach out to them and say, why don't we do this the right way that protects us, it protects you, and maybe we can even find a way for both of us to make some money from it. If you look at all of the posts about this, most people are reading Valve the Riot Act here, but I think Gary Newman of Gary's Mod fame has the most nuanced take. Here's what he says. I think while it's maybe out of character for Valve to take down fan projects like this, it's hardly surprising when you have their entire game uploaded. I somehow don't think old Valve would have let anyone port Half-Life to another engine and host it all publicly either. Sandbox doesn't have a license to use Valve's content, only the engine. It's not a mod, it's not Gmod. We didn't want to commit a chunk of profit so early in development when we don't even know what the final product is going to look like. So basically, it seems like Amper didn't want to spend money licensing something that they weren't sure they would actually end up using anyway. They didn't know how it was going to turn out. It was experimental. And Valve, again, has no choice to defend its IP, especially since their entire game was uploaded to GitHub. So in both cases, I feel like this is not necessarily Valve being the bad guy, but at the same time, I think it's important that people remember that these companies are not your friends. Speaking of companies making unpopular moves, Capcom recently decided that they would add Enigma DRM to a bunch of their old PC games. Most people didn't notice this until there was a patch to, I think, a 12-year-old game, Resident Evil Revelations, which performed very poorly. People complained and Capcom removed it, but they said that they're planning on bringing it back once they get the performance bugs worked out right. Many people blamed this poor performance on Enigma DRM. I'm not going to sit here and pretend that I know that that's what's the issue or not, because that's way outside of my wheelhouse. But what I will say is I've never been a fan of DRM. I've always said that DRM only ever harms the people who are paying customers for your games, and it never really does anything to prevent piracy. Yes, I'm aware that Steam has DRM as well, and again, I am not a fan, but I'm not against it so much that I refuse to buy games. But I guess my biggest issue here is when DRM gets added after the fact. Let's say I stick to my guns just a little bit more when it comes to DRM, and I refuse to buy any game that has it. A game comes out without this software. I buy it, and then the software gets patched in after the fact. I can see why that would ruffle some feathers. And I feel like it would be like a Darth Vader moment. I've altered the deal, pray I don't alter it further. This is no different to me than when a game is sent to reviewers and it doesn't have a bunch of predatory monetization stuff in it. And then when the game ships, all that nonsense is added in after the reviews are already out. It feels disingenuous. It feels kind of scummy. And I personally am not a fan. So while I haven't actually seen firsthand evidence of bricked Steam Decks from this kind of thing, it's not impossible. I'm also irritated with companies like Capcom that do this kind of thing. Though I'm weak, and let's be honest, when the next Monster Hunter game comes out, I'll be buying it day one anyway to play on my Steam Deck, so I guess I'm part of the problem. Valve recently changed their stance on games made with AI. Now, when a dev submits their game, there's going to be an AI disclosure section. So devs will be able to say, if they're using AI, if it's pre-generated AI, or if it's live generated AI. If it's pre-gen AI, then the devs have to promise that they aren't stealing content from others when they're using this AI. Though if you're using AI, there's really no way to know if you are stealing somebody else's work because you don't know what that AI was trained on. This basically makes sure that Valve can't get blamed if some game is infringing on somebody else's stuff and a lawsuit comes. Valve can basically say, hey, go after them. We didn't do it. The devs lied to us. The other option is live generated AI, which has basically the same rules that they have to follow, but it also says that the devs have to have guidelines in to make sure that the algorithm isn't generating content that would be considered illegal. I have to be honest, I don't know how I feel about AI. The only way to train it is to feed it data. So where is this data coming from? And is all the data that's being fed to this algorithm coming from sources that are consenting to this? I can absolutely see the benefits to the gaming industry, like having NPCs that follow their own AI personalities so that when you and I play the same game, we don't necessarily have the same exact experience. But I can also see the downsides where, something that used to be written by a person gets outsourced to ChatGPT's equivalent and people end up losing jobs because of it. It's a real problem, and I don't see a real solution to it. It's a tool, and I can absolutely see people using it to do things that make video games even cooler, and also ways that people can use it that are going to cost people their jobs. What do you guys think? Either way, I think it's safe to say that most devs are going to continue to work with Valve regardless of their stance on AI, and they'll continue to target the Steam Deck as well. If you want to know why I think so, check out this video right here. From the NerdNest, I'm Bill. Stay rad, everybody.